In Nigeria, the National Youth Service Corps, NYSC, is a rite of passage. Fresh graduates from all walks of life are sent to distant states to serve their country, often meeting new friends, experiencing different cultures, and testing the boundaries of their beliefs. In the 21st century, you'd think the time of rituals, witchcraft, and mysticism was a distant memory, but that year, in the remote town of Ijebu-Ijesha in Osun State, one NYSC group found themselves entangled in an experience that challenged everything they thought they knew. Anita was the kind of person who drew others in effortlessly. Hailing from a well-off family in Lagos, she was always polished, well-dressed, and effortlessly confident. Her NYSC assignment brought her to Ijebu-Ijesha, where she quickly formed a tight-knit group of friends, Bimp, Tund, Sola, and F, each from different backgrounds, drawn to Anita's magnetic charm. The group was inseparable, their bonds deepening through shared experiences, campfire nights, and endless conversations. Anita often led these gatherings, telling them stories that seemed to blend old superstitions with modern wisdom, stories that were so captivating, you could almost believe they were true. One humid evening, Anita invited her friends to a nearby forest for what she called a ceremony of friendship. Intrigued by the mystery, her friends agreed. They gathered under the cover of darkness, the sounds of nocturnal creatures surrounding them as Anita spread a blanket and placed strange items in the center, candles, a mirror, and a stone she claimed had been passed down through her family for generations. Her friends laughed nervously, unsure if it was all a prank or an elaborate storytelling session. Anita began by leading them in a chant, instructing them to close their eyes and focus on their breaths. She whispered that this was an ancient ritual, meant to bind friends together forever, transcending time and place. As they joined her chant, a strange sense of tranquility and tension washed over them. Bimp later recalled feeling as though an invisible presence had entered the circle, but at the time, she dismissed it as nerves. As the days passed, her friends couldn't shake the strange feelings they experienced after that night in the forest. Bimp's dreams became filled with cryptic symbols, strange languages she didn't recognize, and visions of unfamiliar faces. Tund, the skeptic, laughed it off, but even he noticed that he felt inexplicably drawn to Anita, often finding himself thinking about her at odd moments, as if she were somehow always present in his mind. Then, things took an even stranger turn. During a mandatory NYSC event, the friends noticed that Anita was acting odd. Her gaze was distant, her smile a little too wide, and she would often mutter to herself as if in conversation with someone unseen. F confronted her, concerned that she might be struggling with the intense pressure of NYSC, but Anita brushed it off, laughing in a way that sent chills down F's spine. She assured them she was just unlocking her potential and encouraged them to trust her process. Over time, each friend began noticing small changes in themselves. Bimp, who was once mild-mannered, started having flashes of rage over minor inconveniences. Tund began hearing voices that seemed to echo around him, faint and indistinct, but ever-present. Sola found herself drawn to places she had never felt interested in before, like graveyards and quiet, isolated spots. F, the most skeptical of the group, began experiencing out-of-body sensations, as if her soul were trying to drift away from her body. Despite the unease growing in each of them, they continued spending time with Anita, believing that their bonds of friendship were simply growing stronger. But then, things took a darker turn. One night, as the group sat in a dimly lit cafe, Anita revealed that she had something important to share. She looked each of them in the eyes, her expression serious, almost reverent, and said, "We're bound together, you know. Forever. No one can break this connection." The friends shared nervous glances, feeling both comforted and disturbed. When they asked what she meant, Anita only smiled and said, "You'll understand soon enough." That same night, Bimp woke from a terrifying dream to find strange marks on her arm, 3 lines etched into her skin, as if by an invisible blade. She rushed to the others, her heart pounding as she showed them the marks. To her horror, each of them had similar markings, fresh and raw, all etched in identical places on their bodies. Sola began to panic, while Tund tried to rationalize, saying it was just a coincidence, but deep down, they all knew something unexplainable was happening. From that moment on, the group struggled to distance themselves from Anita, but they found it nearly impossible. They would have sudden urges to reach out to her, dreams pulling them back into her presence, visions of her face appearing in places she couldn't possibly be. They became trapped in a web of influence and power, caught between the desire to break free and an inexplicable compulsion to stay close. Months passed, and Nysc drew to a close. They went their separate ways, hoping that distance would weaken the bond, but as each of them returned to their respective lives, they realized that they were forever marked. Strange occurrences continued to haunt them, whispers in empty rooms, shadows that moved in the corner of their eyes, and feelings of dread that came without reason. The initiation had left a scar on their souls, a bond that transcended time and place, tying them to a chapter of their lives they could never fully escape. The night of the gathering, Mama Aya gave each friend a small woven amulet of protection and a special mixture of herbs to sprinkle around their circle. "These will guard your spirits," she told them. "But remember, a bond broken by force will leave scars. Only by reclaiming your strength and faith can you truly be free." As they stepped into the forest clearing, the air grew thick, almost suffocating, as if the trees themselves were alive, watching. They found Anita already waiting, her expression serene, yet her eyes glimmered with something dark. She looked at each friend in turn, her smile unsettling. Anita spoke first, her voice soft, but echoing through the trees. "I knew you would return. You were drawn back to me, because we are forever bound. Accept it, and you'll find peace." Tund, emboldened by Mama Aya's amulet, stepped forward. "No, Anita. This isn't peace. It's torment, and we want out." Anita laughed softly, shaking her head. "You think you can just walk away from what we shared? What we bound ourselves to that night?" But Bimp was prepared. She reached into her pocket, pulling out the herbs Mama Aya had given her, and began sprinkling them around the circle. As she did, the air grew warmer, and the friends could feel a new energy around them, a protective force pushing back against Anita's influence. Anita's calm demeanor faltered, her eyes narrowing as she watched them. Finding her voice, spoke up. "We didn't agree to this. You tricked us. Whatever you bound to us, we don't want it anymore." Mama Aya had instructed them in a simple but powerful ritual to reclaim their spirits. Forming a circle, each friend held hands and began to recite the words she had taught them, a chant of liberation that called on the spirits of their ancestors and the land to sever the binding ties. The chant grew louder, and a wind began to swirl in the clearing, pulling the herbs into the air, creating a veil between them and Anita. As they continued, they felt a shift, a sharp, almost painful release, as if invisible chains were snapping around them. Anita's face twisted in fury as she felt her power over them wane, her voice rising in a desperate attempt to counter their chant. She tried to enter the circle, but the protective herbs flared up, forming a barrier she couldn't pass. Her once mesmerizing eyes grew wild, and her voice crackled with frustration. "You think you can break free? You don't understand what you're giving up," she hissed, her voice filled with anger and disbelief. Sola, feeling the strength of her ancestors surge through her, replied, "We're taking back what's ours. We were bound without our will, and now we're free." As they completed the chant, a final surge of energy rippled through the circle. They felt a powerful force break, an almost physical release, as if invisible cords that had bound their spirits were finally cut. Each friend could sense it. The oppressive weight, the strange dreams, the constant pull to Anita, all faded. For the first time in months, they felt truly free. The forest fell silent. Anita collapsed to her knees, her face a mix of anger and defeat. Without a word, the friends turned their backs on her and walked out of the forest together, leaving her behind. They could feel the bonds they had fought so hard to break dissolving as they stepped out of the trees and back into the open sky. In the weeks that followed, each friend began to heal. The dreams ceased, the whispers stopped, and the scars on their spirits slowly mended. They stayed in contact, closer now than ever before, knowing that they had faced something dark together and emerged stronger.